The Vraxians came to Earth 50 years ago. They were tall, insect-like aliens with hard outer shells and 6 limbs. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark, and their voices made clicking sounds that humans found hard to understand. They had ships that could destroy cities and weapons that made Earth's military look like children with toys. At first, humans tried to fight back. Missiles were launched, armies gathered, and brave pilots flew to meet the alien ships. None of it mattered. The Vraxians simply waited until they had made their point, then offered humanity a choice: serve or die. The world's governments signed treaties. They called it peace, but everyone knew it was surrender. Humans would work, pay taxes and resources, and follow Vraxian laws. In return, they would be allowed to live. For most people on Earth, life went on. They saw Vraxian patrol ships in the sky and paid their taxes when collection time came. But out on the edges of human space, on colony worlds like Argos III, things were different. Argos III was a dusty planet with orange skies and 2 small moons. It wasn't much to look at, but beneath its surface lay valuable minerals that both humans and Vraxians needed. About 500 people lived there, working in the mines or supporting those who did. Alan Price walked along the ridge overlooking the colony, his boots kicking up small clouds of rusty dust with each step. 10 years ago, he had been captain. Price, a Marine with medals for bravery and a promising career ahead. Now he was just Alan, head of security for a mining colony that most people on Earth didn't know existed. "Daddy, look what I found." Alan turned to see his daughter Lily running toward him, her dark hair bouncing with each step. At 8 years old, she had never seen Earth. She knew only the orange skies of Argos III and the stories her parents told her of blue oceans and green forests. "Careful on the rocks, sweetheart," Alan called, smiling as she slowed down. In her hands, she held her sample case, a clear plastic box divided into small sections. Each section contained a different rock or crystal she had found on her explorations. "Mom says this one might be new," Lily said, holding up a pale blue crystal that seemed to glow from within. "She's going to test it in her lab." Alan nodded, proud of his daughter's excitement for science. His wife Samantha was the colony's lead geologist, officially searching for valuable minerals for the mining operation. Unofficially, she studied everything about Argos III, building a knowledge base that might someday help humanity break free from Vraxian control. "That's great, Lily, but we need to head back now. It'll be dark soon." As they walked back toward the collection of prefabricated buildings that made up the colony, Alan saw his friend Greg Martinez waiting at the edge of the settlement. The look on Greg's face made Alan stop. "What's wrong?" Alan asked when they got closer. "Vraxian ship incoming," Greg said quietly, glancing at Lily. "Routine inspection, they say." Alan's jaw tightened. "They're not due for another month." "I know. Frank is trying to find out why they're early." Lily looked up at her father, sensing the tension. "Are the bad bugs coming?" Alan forced a smile. "Just a visit, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. Let's get you home to Mom." As they walked through the colony, Alan could feel everyone watching them. They all knew what Vraxian inspections could mean. Sometimes it was just counting resources and checking production numbers. Other times the aliens would take people away for questioning. Sometimes those people came back. Sometimes they didn't. The Price family lived in a single-story home at the edge of the colony, close to Samantha's lab. As they approached, Samantha came out to meet them, her face tight with worry. "I heard," she said, taking Lily's hand. "The ship will land in an hour." Alan nodded. "I need to get to the landing pad. Frank will need help." Frank Miller was the colony administrator, the person officially in charge of dealing with the Vraxians. "Be careful," Samantha said, her eyes conveying what she couldn't say in front of Lily. Alan touched her cheek gently. "Always am." He knelt, down to Lily's level. "You stay with Mom today, okay? No exploring until the visitors leave." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'll help Mom in the lab instead." "That's my girl." Alan kissed the top of her head, then turned and walked toward the colony center. The Vraxian ship appeared in the sky an hour later, a dark shape that blocked the sun as it descended. It was smaller than their warships, but still large enough to carry 100 Vraxian soldiers if needed. The landing struts extended as it touched down on the pad, sending up clouds of dust that were carried away by the hot wind. Frank Miller stood at the edge of the pad, wearing his cleanest clothes and the official colony administrator badge. Alan stood a few steps behind him, along with Greg and 2 other security officers. None of them were armed. Vraxians didn't allow humans to carry weapons in their presence. The ship's door opened with a hiss, and 3 Vraxians stepped out. 2 were soldiers, carrying plasma rifles and wearing the scaled armor of the Vraxian military. The 3rd wore the elaborate decorations of a high-ranking official. "Governor Zekthar," Frank said, bowing slightly. "We weren't expecting your visit. For another month." The Vraxian governor's yellow eyes fixed on Frank. When he spoke, his clicking sounds were translated by a device at his throat. "Your tribute has been insufficient for 3 cycles," Zekthar said. "Explanations are required." Frank nodded. "Yes, Governor. We've had some equipment failures that slowed production. If you'll allow me to show you the maintenance logs, I'm not interested in your excuses," Zekthar interrupted. "The Empire requires resources. Your failure threatens the stability of this sector." Alan watched as Frank tried to explain the genuine problems they'd been having. The mining equipment was old, spare parts were hard to come by, and the last supply ship from Earth had been delayed. More colonists had gathered behind them, worried about what was happening. Alan noticed with growing concern that more Vraxian soldiers had exited the ship. 8 now stood in formation behind their governor. "Perhaps a demonstration is needed," Zekthar said finally, cutting off Frank's explanations. A reminder of the cost of failure. Alan felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen demonstrations before during the war. They usually involved public executions. Before anyone could speak, a small voice called out from the crowd, "Daddy!" Alan turned to see Lily pushing through the gathered colonists, her sample case clutched to her chest. Samantha appeared behind her, reaching for her daughter with panic on her face. "Lily, no!" Alan shouted, but it was too late. The little girl ran toward her father, unaware of the danger. She stopped short when she saw the Vraxians, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. Zekthar turned to look at the child. For a long moment, no one moved. "The small one will suffice," the governor said at last. A simple lesson, easily taught. Alan lunged forward, but the Vraxian soldiers moved faster. 2 of them grabbed his arms while another blocked Frank from interfering. Lily stood frozen, too frightened to move as Zekthar approached her. "Please," Alan begged, struggling against the soldier's grip. "She's just a child. Take me instead." Zekthar didn't even look at him. Children grow into adults who might forget their place. Best to remind everyone now. The governor drew a ceremonial blade from his belt. It glinted in the orange sunlight of Argos III. The colonists screamed and surged forward, but more Vraxian soldiers appeared, holding them back with raised weapons. Alan broke free with strength born of desperation and ran toward his daughter. He was 3 steps away when the governor's blade fell. Lily's sample case dropped to the ground, colorful rocks scattering across the rusty soil of Argos III. Among them, the pale blue crystal that had made her so excited just hours before now glowed with reflected crimson. Time stopped for Alan Price as he fell to his knees beside his daughter. Around him, the world exploded into chaos. Colonists screamed and pushed against the Vraxian soldiers. Samantha broke through the crowd, her face twisted in horror as she saw what had happened to Lily. Governor Zekthar stepped back, wiping his blade clean on a cloth. He seemed unmoved by the scene before him, as if he had done nothing more important than squash an insect. "Let this be a lesson," he announced, his translator making his clicks sound flat and emotionless. "The Empire does not accept failure. Your next tribute will be on time and in full." Alan didn't hear him. He gathered Lily's small body in his arms, his tears falling onto her still face. Samantha reached them and collapsed beside her husband and daughter, her scientist's hands now helpless to save what mattered most. The Vraxians began to move back toward their ship, their mission complete. Governor Zekthar paused only once, to pick up the pale blue crystal that had fallen from Lily's sample case. He examined it briefly before pocketing it, then continued walking. "You're dead," Alan whispered, so quietly that only Samantha heard him. "You just don't know it yet." 3 days later, they buried Lily on a hill overlooking the colony. Everyone, from Argos III, attended, standing in silence as Alan and Samantha placed their daughter's body in the red soil of the planet she had loved. They marked her grave with a circle of the colorful rocks she had collected, surrounding a simple stone with her name. That night, Frank Miller found Alan in the colony's small bar, sitting alone with an untouched drink. "We need to talk," Frank said, sliding into the seat across from him. Alan didn't look up. "Nothing to talk about. I know what you're thinking, and you can't do it." Frank leaned closer. "The Vraxians would destroy the whole colony in response. I don't care anymore. Samantha cares. The other families here care." Frank ran a hand through his gray hair. "Look, Earth is sending a diplomat to file an official complaint. It won't bring Lily back, but—" Alan laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "A complaint? My daughter is dead and Earth wants to file paperwork? It's all they can do against the Vraxians, you know that." Alan finally looked up, and Frank flinched at what he saw in his friend's eyes. "No, it's not all that can be done," Alan said quietly. "It's just all they're willing to do." 2 weeks later, Alan Price disappeared. He told Samantha he was going, but not where or exactly what he planned. She didn't ask. Instead, she gave him a small data chip and a kiss for "when you need it," she said. Then she returned to her lab, where she had been working day and night since Lily's death. Alan took a small ship that officially was listed as lost in a mining accident. He set course for New Detroit, a space station on the edge of human space, known for its lack of questions and abundance of people with useful skills. The Red Dragon bar on New Detroit's lowest level was dark and smoky. People came here to avoid being seen, to make deals better left unrecorded. Alan sat at a corner table, nursing a drink and watching the door. After an hour, a tall woman with short gray hair and a scar across her left cheek approached his table. "You're a long way from home, Captain Price," she said, sitting down without being invited. "Not Captain anymore, Commander Chen. Just Alan." Lisa Chen studied him with eyes that had seen too much during the war against the Vraxians. "And I'm not Commander anymore. Just Lisa. What brings you to this hole?" "I need people. Good people who hate the bugs as much as I do." Lisa's expression didn't change, but she leaned forward slightly. "That's dangerous talk. My daughter is dead, killed by Governor Zekthar himself as an example to the colony." For a moment, the hardness in Lisa's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, Alan. How old?" 8. Lisa cursed softly. "What are you planning?" "Something stupid, something impossible." Alan looked directly into her eyes. "I'm going to kill him. Not just him, all of them. Every Vraxian who thinks they can murder our children without consequences. You'll need a ship, weapons, a crew willing to die. I have a ship, small but fast. As for the rest..." Alan shrugged. "That's why I'm here." Lisa was quiet for a long time. Then she took a small device from her pocket and pressed her thumb against it. A list of names appeared in the air between them. "People I trust. People who lost someone to the bugs. They might listen to you." She closed the display. "But you need more than revenge, Alan. You need a plan that works." "I have the beginning of one," Alan said, touching the data chip Samantha had given him. "My wife is working on the rest." Over the next month, Alan traveled from station to station, planet to planet, meeting with people on Lisa's list. Some were ex-military like him. Others were civilians who had lost family to Vraxian cruelty. Each one listened to his story, and most agreed to help. Daniel Ortiz had been a pilot in Earth's Navy before the surrender. Now he smuggled goods past Vraxian patrols. "I'll fly any ship, anywhere," he told Alan. "Just give me a chance to hurt." Those bugs. Paula King had been a weapons specialist before the war. The Vraxians had taken her husband for questioning 5 years ago. He never returned. "I've been developing things they don't know about," she said, showing Alan designs for weapons that officially didn't exist. By the time Alan returned to New Detroit, he had gathered 27 people committed to his cause. Lisa Chen had found 16 more. "We're still outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, Lisa said as they sat in the small ship Alan had acquired. "We won't fight them directly," Alan explained. "Samantha has been studying Vraxian biology for years. She believes she's found a weakness." Alan inserted the data chip into the ship's computer. Diagrams appeared showing the inner workings of a Vraxian's respiratory system. "Their breathing apparatus is vulnerable to certain compounds," he explained. "Chemicals found in common Earth plants modified slightly. Not deadly to us, but to them." Lisa studied the diagrams with growing interest. "This could work, if we can deploy it in enclosed spaces where they gather." "Exactly. We hit them where they feel safest. Their command centers, their luxury homes, their private clubs where they laugh about killing our people." Alan's voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "And we leave a message each time." "What message?" Alan took out a small hologram projector and activated it. Above it floated the image of Lily, smiling, holding up a colorful rock to show the camera. "For Lily," he said simply. Their first target was a small Vraxian outpost on an asteroid near Jupiter, just a monitoring station with a crew of 6. Daniel flew them in using a stolen Vraxian identification code. Paula had designed special suits that would protect them from the compound they were about to use. The Vraxians never had a chance to sound an alarm. The humans moved through the station silently, releasing the compound into the air system. When it was over, they left a small hologram projector beside the dead Vraxians. Anyone who found them would see Lily's smiling face, and the words, "For Lily," in both human and Vraxian script. Back on their ship, Lisa looked at Alan. "That was almost too easy." Alan nodded. "It will get harder, but now we know the compound works." "Where next?" Alan brought up a map of Vraxian installations in the solar system. "We work our way up. Small outposts first, then larger targets. Each time we leave the same message. Until they learn to fear us as much as we've feared them," Lisa said. "No," Alan corrected her. "Until they learn that fear isn't enough. Until they understand what happens when you take something precious from someone who has nothing left to lose." On Argos III, Samantha Price received a simple message on her private computer. "It works." She allowed herself a small smile, then returned to her work. The compound could be improved, made stronger, more effective. And there were other weaknesses to exploit in Vraxian biology. For the first time since Lily died, Samantha felt something other than grief. She felt purpose. In his palace on the Vraxian homeworld, Governor Zekthar received reports of the attack. 6 Vraxians dead at a minor outpost, a strange message left behind. "Find who did this," he ordered his security chief. "Make an example of them." He didn't feel worried. Humans had tried resistance before and always failed. This would be no different. He was wrong. Word spread quickly among the Vraxians. 6 dead at an outpost near Jupiter. Then 12 more at a research station on Mars. A week later, a luxury resort for Vraxian officials on Europa was found empty, with 23 bodies and the same message left behind. For Lily. The attacks were precise and silent. No alarms triggered, no distress calls made. Just Vraxians found dead and a human child's face watching over them. On Earth, Admiral Diane Foster sat in her office at the United Earth Fleet headquarters. Across from her desk sat a very unhappy Vraxian diplomat. "These attacks are acts of war," the diplomat clicked, his translator making his anger sound flat and mechanical. "If your government cannot control its people, the Empire will take action." Admiral Foster kept her face neutral. "We are doing everything possible to find these terrorists. They do not represent humanity's official position." "Your official position matters little when our people are dying," the diplomat replied. Governor Zekthar demands results. After the diplomat left, Admiral Foster opened a secure channel to her second-in-command, Captain William Reeves. The bugs are getting nervous, she said. Captain Reeves nodded. Good. Maybe they'll think twice before killing children. Officially, I never said that. Foster's eyes narrowed. Make sure fleet patrols stay clear of these coordinates for the next week. Maintenance issues, log it properly. Reeves looked at the coordinates and understood. Another Vraxian target, one that would not receive help from nearby Earthships. Yes, Admiral. Maintenance issues can be so unpredictable. Meanwhile, Alan's ship was docked at a hidden base in the asteroid belt. What had started as a crew of 43 had grown to over 60 as word of their success spread. Ex-soldiers, engineers, pilots, and civilians who had suffered under Vraxian rule found their way to him. In the ship's main room, Alan addressed his growing force. Our next target is bigger, he said, showing a hologram of a Vraxian command center on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Security will be tighter, but the reward is greater. This facility coordinates all Vraxian military operations in the outer system. Lisa Chen studied the hologram. How many bugs inside? At least 50, including 3 high-ranking officers who have ordered attacks on human settlements. Daniel Ortiz frowned. Our compound worked well in smaller spaces, but this place is huge. We don't have enough to fill the whole facility. Alan nodded to Paula King, who stepped forward. That's why we have this, she said, holding up a small device. It doesn't just release the compound, it multiplies it, spreading through their ventilation system faster than before. Samantha's latest work, Alan explained. She's been improving the formula. Back on Argos III, Samantha Price had not been idle. While continuing her research into Vraxian weaknesses, she had also gathered information. The colony's position as a mining outpost meant supply ships came and went regularly. Each one brought news and took away secure data packages for Alan. Frank Miller watched her with growing concern. The Vraxians are starting to suspect, he told her one evening in her lab. They've increased patrols everywhere. It's only a matter of time before they connect the attacks to what happened here. Samantha didn't look up from her microscope. Let them suspect. They can't prove anything. They don't need proof to punish us all, Frank reminded her. Be careful, Sam. We can't lose you too. On Titan, the attack went exactly as planned. Alan's team infiltrated the Vraxian command center using stolen access codes. They planted Paula's devices throughout the ventilation system, then retreated to a safe distance. But as they were leaving, an alarm sounded. We've been spotted, Lisa hissed through their comm system. Security drones at the east exit. Alan quickly changed plans. Daniel, take Team 2 out the north side. We'll draw their attention. The next few minutes were chaos. For the first time, Alan's people had to fight directly against Vraxian forces. The aliens were strong and their armor tough, but they fell just like anyone else when shot in the right places. Alan and Lisa's team fought their way to their escape ship, losing 2 people in the process. Daniel's team made it out cleanly on the other side of the facility. As their ships raced away from Titan, Alan looked back at the Vraxian command center. Already he could see signs that the compound was working. Vraxians stumbling out of doors, clawing at their breathing apparatuses. We lost good people today, Lisa said quietly beside him. Alan nodded. The first but not the last. They knew the risks. The bugs will be more prepared next time. So will we. News of the Titan attack spread throughout the solar system. This time it couldn't be kept quiet. 57 Vraxians dead, including a regional commander. The human resistance had escalated from small outposts to major military targets. Governor Zekthar was furious. In his palace on the Vraxian homeworld, he summoned his top military advisors. Find these humans and exterminate them, he ordered. Double patrols on all shipping lanes. Inspect every vessel. I want these terrorists found. One of his advisors, General Krell, spoke carefully. There is something strange about these attacks, Governor. They all leave the same message. For Lily. Our intelligence suggests this refers to a human child killed during an inspection on a colony world. Zekthar waved a dismissive limb. I have made examples of many humans. They all look the same to me. This was recent. On Argos, 3rd, the records indicate you personally carried out the demonstration. For a moment, Zekthar paused, remembering. Ah, yes, the small one with the case of rocks. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a pale blue crystal. I kept this as a souvenir. Perhaps we should investigate the colony, General Krell suggested. The timing suggests a connection. Zekthar clicked in annoyance. Very well, send a battlecruiser to Argos III. Question everyone. Find any links to these terrorists. On Earth, Admiral Foster received the news of the Vraxian battlecruiser's departure with alarm. She immediately sent a coded warning to her network of sympathizers throughout the system. One of those messages reached Alan's ship just as they were planning their next move. A battlecruiser is heading to Argos III, Alan told his people, his face grim. They suspect the connection. Samantha, Lisa said, understanding immediately. She's in danger. Alan was already moving toward the bridge. Daniel set course for Argos III, maximum speed. We'll never beat a Vraxian battlecruiser, Paula pointed out. They're too fast. Then we'll have to be smarter, Alan replied. Lisa, contact your people near Earth. We need a distraction, something big enough to delay that cruiser. As Alan's ship raced toward Argos III, Samantha received the warning from Admiral Foster. She calmly began destroying her research and transferring her most important findings to secure data chips. Frank Miller rushed into her lab. Vraxian battlecruiser, just entered orbit. They're sending down shuttles full of soldiers. Samantha handed him a small package. Hide this where they won't find it. Alan will need it. What about you? You need to hide. She shook her head. They're looking for connections to the attacks. If I run, they'll know I'm involved. They'll punish the whole colony. She took a deep breath. I'll face them. Buy time for Alan. Outside, Vraxian shuttles were landing in the colony center. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready. At their head was General Krell himself, come to find the source of the attacks that had humiliated the Empire. Samantha Price walked out to meet them, her head held high. Behind her, hidden away in her lab, was the key to the Vraxians' destruction. If only Alan could reach it in time. General Krell towered over Samantha Price, his yellow eyes studying her with cold intelligence. Around them, Vraxian soldiers searched the colony, pulling people from their homes and checking every building. You are the scientist, Krell said, his translator making the statement sound flat. You study rocks and soil. Samantha nodded. That's my job, finding valuable minerals for the mines. And you are the mate of Alan Price, former military captain. She kept her face calm despite the fear that shot through her. They knew about Alan. My husband left weeks ago. I don't know where he is. General. Krell's mouth parts clicked in what might have been a laugh. Interesting timing, just after the small human was terminated as an example. Our daughter, Samantha said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Her name was Lily. Yes. The same name that appears at all the attack sites. Krell moved closer. You expect me to believe this is coincidence? Frank Miller stepped forward. We've cooperated with all Empire regulations. Our production is back on schedule. Whatever you're looking for, it's not here. Krell ignored him, focusing on Samantha. Your laboratory will be searched thoroughly. You won't find anything of interest, Samantha replied. Just rocks and soil, samples. As Vraxian soldiers led Samantha away for more questioning, she glanced at the sky. Somewhere up there, Alan was racing toward Argos III. She hoped he would be smart enough to stay away. In space near the orbit of Mars, a Vraxian patrol ship exploded suddenly. Then another. Emergency signals filled communication channels as 3 more ships reported attacks. The battle cruiser heading for Argos III received the distress calls and paused. Multiple attacks in Sector 7, a Vraxian officer reported to the ship's commander. They request immediate assistance. The commander hesitated. His orders from Governor Zekthar were clear: investigate Argos III. But leaving patrol ships to be destroyed would be a serious failure. Divert course to Sector 7, he decided. We will deal with the colony after. Hiding in the shadow of an asteroid, Lisa Chen watched through her ship's sensors as the battlecruiser changed direction. It worked, she said into her communicator. The diversions pulled the cruiser away. You have maybe 8 hours before they realize it's a trap and head back to Argos III. Understood, Alan's voice replied. We're almost there. Be careful getting out. You too. Don't do anything stupid. Lisa paused. More stupid than usual, I mean. Alan's ship approached Argos III from the dark side, using the smaller of the two moons to hide their approach. Daniel Ortiz kept the engines running at minimal power to avoid detection by the Vraxian soldiers already on the planet. Scans showed 20 Vraxian life signs in the colony, Paula reported. 2 shuttles on the ground. Small force, but enough. To control the situation, Alan studied the layout on his screen. They're concentrating on the lab and administrative buildings. Samantha will be there. Frontal assault would be suicide by, one of the newer crew members said. Who said anything about frontal? Alan replied. We have something better. He held up one of Paula's devices, similar to what they had used on Titan but smaller. New version. More targeted. We drop in quietly, plant these, and extract Samantha and anyone else who wants to leave. The plan was simple. Alan and 5 others would land a small craft away from the colony and approach on foot. Meanwhile, Daniel would keep the main ship ready for a quick escape. As they prepared to leave, Paula handed Alan a special mask. This will protect you from the compound for 30 minutes. After that, you'll be as vulnerable as the bugs. Alan nodded his thanks and turned to his team. Remember, our priority is getting our people out safely. The compound will distract the Vraxians, but don't take unnecessary risks. They landed 3 miles from the colony and moved quickly across the dusty landscape. The orange sky of Argos III was darkening as night approached, giving them extra cover. At the edge of the colony, they split into 2 groups. Alan and 2 others headed for the lab while the rest moved toward the administrative center where most of the colonists were being held. Alan's group reached the lab without being spotted. Inside, they found 2 Vraxian soldiers searching through Samantha's equipment and files. On 3, Alan whispered to his companions. 1, 2, 3. They burst through the door. Before the Vraxians could react, Alan activated a small device that emitted a targeted pulse, disabling the aliens' communication systems. Then they fired specialized stun weapons that Paula had designed specifically for Vraxian physiology. Both soldiers dropped without raising an alarm. Check everything, Alan told his team. Samantha would have hidden her research somewhere they wouldn't think to look. After searching for several minutes, one of Alan's team called him over. Found something. In a sample case similar to the one Lily had carried, hidden among dozens of ordinary rocks, was a small data chip. Alan pocketed it. Let's find Samantha. They moved carefully toward the colony center. From their position, they could see Vraxian soldiers guarding a group of colonists outside the administrative building. Samantha was among them, standing tall despite looking tired and worried. General Krell was addressing the colonists. Your continued resistance is pointless. Tell us what you know about these attacks and your punishment will be less severe. Alan gave his companions a signal. They planted Paula's devices at strategic points around the colony center, then took cover. Ready? Alan asked through his communicator. In position, came the reply from the second team. Devices planted. Alan took a deep breath, then pressed the activator. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a fine mist began to spray from the devices, spreading quickly through the air. The effect on the Vraxians was immediate. General Krell stumbled, his limbs twitching as he tried to activate his emergency breathing apparatus. The other soldiers reacted similarly, some falling to the ground, others firing their weapons wildly. Now! Alan shouted. His teams moved in, guiding the colonists away from the confused and dying Vraxians. Alan ran straight to Samantha. You shouldn't have come, she said when she saw him, but her eyes showed relief. Couldn't let you have all the fun, he replied, taking her hand. We need to move. More Vraxians will be here soon. Not everyone can leave, Samantha said. The colony. Anyone who wants to stay can stay. But you're coming with me. I have your data chip. Samantha's eyes widened. You found it. Good. It's the final piece, Alan. The key to everything. As they ran toward the landing site, Samantha explained. It's not just a weapon anymore, it's a cure. A cure for what? For their cruelty. Samantha looked at him with intense eyes. The compound doesn't just affect their breathing. In smaller doses, it changes their brain chemistry, makes them less aggressive, more empathetic. Alan stared at her. You're saying we can make them feel remorse? Maybe. It needs more testing, but imagine, Alan, if we could make them understand what they've done. Before they could discuss it further, a Vraxian shuttle roared overhead, having just arrived from orbit. They're sending reinforcements, Alan said. We need to hurry. By the time they reached the ship, most of the colonists who wanted to leave had already boarded. Frank Miller was among those staying behind. Someone has to be here to rebuild, he told Alan. We'll make something of this place. For Lily. Alan gripped his friend's shoulder. Thank you. For everything. As Daniel piloted the ship away from Argos III, Samantha looked at the planet growing smaller below them. We'll come back, she promised. When it's safe. Alan took her hand. First, we have a governor to visit. On his palace on the Vraxian homeworld, Governor Zekthar received the news of the attack on Argos III with growing anger. Not only had the human terrorists struck again, but they had rescued the very people he had been investigating. The battle. Cruiser was diverted by a trick, his aide explained. By the time it returned to Argos III, the humans were gone. Zekthar smashed a decorative item on his desk. Find them, he roared. I want every ship, every soldier looking for these humans. There's more, Governor, the aide continued nervously. General Krell is dead, and the humans left a message. A hologram appeared above the desk. A small human child, the same one from all the previous attacks, smiled at him. But this time, the message was different. We're coming for you next, it said in perfect Vraxian. For 2 weeks, Governor Zekthar barely slept. Every shadow made him jump. Every unexpected sound caused him to call for guards. He tripled security around his palace and never went anywhere without an armed escort. Reports came in daily of more attacks on Vraxian facilities. Some were real. Others were false alarms caused by nervous officials. The empire that had ruled through fear was now experiencing fear itself. In a hidden base on one of Neptune's moons, Alan and Samantha prepared for their final mission. Their force had grown to over 100 people, and supporters throughout the solar system provided information, supplies, and diversions when needed. The compound is ready, Samantha said, showing Alan a series of small, clear capsules. I've created 2 versions. The red one is the weapon we've been using. The blue one is the modified version, the one that affects their brain chemistry. Alan studied the blue capsules. And you're sure this will work? As sure as I can be without testing it on a living Vraxian. Samantha hesitated. Alan, we need to talk about what happens after. After we kill Zekthar? After we win? Samantha put her hand on his arm. If we just replace their cruelty with ours, nothing really changes. We need to think beyond revenge. Alan's face hardened. He killed our daughter, Sam. He needs to pay for that. Yes, he does. But there are millions of Vraxians who had nothing to do with Lily's death. If we have a way to change them to make peace possible. She let the thought hang in the air. Lisa Chen entered the room, interrupting their conversation. We have the final intelligence reports, she said. Zekthar is holding a major gathering at his palace tomorrow. All the top officials will be there. Perfect timing, Alan said. What about our inside help? Admiral Foster has arranged for Earth's defensive systems to have a maintenance period during our approach. And our contacts in the palace have provided complete schematics of the security systems. Alan nodded. Then we're ready. That night, as final preparations were made, Alan visited the small memorial they had created for Lily on their ship. It was similar to her grave on Argos 3rd, a circle of colorful rocks surrounding her picture. Tomorrow it ends, he whispered to her image. I hope you'll be proud of what we do. The next day, 3 ships approached the Vraxian homeworld. They looked like standard diplomatic vessels with proper clearance codes provided by Admiral Foster. Inside, Alan's team waited in full battle gear. Remember, Alan told them, our primary target is Governor Zekthar. The secondary targets are the military and political leaders in the Grand Hall. Once we've deployed the compounds, we extract immediately. Daniel piloted the lead ship toward the landing pad closest to the palace. Receiving landing clearance, he reported. They suspect nothing. As they landed, Vraxian officials came forward to greet what they thought were human diplomats. The moment the ship's doors opened, Alan's people moved with practiced efficiency. Stun weapons dropped the welcoming party before they could raise an alarm. Move, Alan ordered. His team split into 3 groups. One secured the landing area. Another headed for the palace's environmental controls. Alan led the main group directly toward the Grand Hall where Zekthar was addressing the gathered officials. They encountered more resistance inside the palace. Vraxian guards fought bravely, but they were unprepared for Paula's specialized weapons and the speed of the human assault. Environmental control secured, came the report over their communications. Ready to deploy on your command. Hold until we reach the Grand Hall, Alan replied. We need to see Zekthar's face. They reached the massive doors leading to the Grand Hall. On a screen beside the door, they could see Governor Zekthar standing at a podium, speaking to hundreds of Vraxian officials. We'll crush these human terrorists, he was saying. Their attacks are the desperate actions of a weak species. The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years and will rule for 10,000 more. Alan looked at Samantha. Which one? She hesitated only a moment, then handed him the blue capsules. This one. Alan stared at her, then slowly nodded. For Lily, he said. Then to his team, deploy the compound. The order went out. Throughout the palace, the environmental systems began distributing Samantha's compound. A fine blue mist filtered into the Grand Hall through hidden vents. Breach the doors, Alan commanded. His team blew the massive doors open and stormed into the hall, weapons ready. On the stage, Governor Zekthar turned in shock. The blue mist was already having an effect. The Vraxians in the hall weren't dying as they had in previous attacks. Instead, they seemed confused, disoriented. Some clutched their heads as if in pain. Alan walked directly down the center aisle toward Zekthar, his weapon raised. The governor's guards tried to intercept him, but they moved clumsily, affected by the compound. You, Zekthar said when Alan reached the stage. I know you. The father. My name is Alan Price. My daughter was Lily Price. You murdered her. Zekthar's yellow eyes blinked rapidly as the compound worked on his brain chemistry. The small one with the rocks. His voice sounded different, less certain. You killed her to make an example, Alan said, his voice carrying through the quiet hall. Now you're the example. He raised his weapon and pointed it directly at Zekthar's head. The governor didn't flinch or beg. He simply looked at Alan with eyes that were beginning to understand. I remember her face now, Zekthar said slowly. She was afraid. Alan's finger tightened on the trigger. Behind him, Samantha stepped forward. Alan, she said quietly, we have a choice. For a long moment, Alan stood frozen, his weapon aimed at the creature who had destroyed his world. Every cell in his body screamed for revenge. But Lily's face floated in his mind. Not the hologram they had left at attack sites, but her real face, alive and curious and kind. Slowly, Alan lowered his weapon. You don't get to die today, he told Zekthar. You get to live with what you've done. You get to feel it. He turned to the communication system at the podium and activated it. broadcasting across all Vraxian frequencies. My name is Alan Price. 3 months ago, Governor Zekthar murdered my 8-year-old daughter to make an example. Today I could kill him to make an example of my own, but that would just continue the cycle that has brought us all here. Throughout the galaxy, on every Vraxian ship and colony, they listened as Alan spoke. The compound we've released isn't just a weapon, it's changing your brain chemistry, allowing you to feel empathy. Maybe for the first time. You're beginning to understand what you've done to us, to countless species. He looked directly at Zekthar. You ruled by fear because you didn't know any other way, now you do. What you build with that knowledge is up to you. 3 days later, representatives from Earth and the Vraxian Empire met to negotiate a real peace, not the surrender documents of before, but a true treaty between equals. Admiral Foster represented Earth, while a subdued Zekthar spoke for the Vraxians. The compound's effects had stabilized, leaving the Vraxians changed, but still themselves. Cannot undo what has been done, Zekthar said, his voice carrying a new tone that humans recognized as regret. But we can build something different. When the treaty was signed, Alan and Samantha were not present. They had returned to Argos III with those colonists who wished to go home. On the hill overlooking the colony, they stood before Lily's grave. The circle of colorful rocks had been maintained by those who stayed behind. Alan placed the pale blue crystal, recovered from Zekthar's palace, in the center. Do you think she would understand? Alan asked, looking at the simple stone with their daughter's name. Samantha took his hand. She was always curious about everything, always trying to understand how things worked, how people thought. I think she would be proud. The Vraxians want to build a memorial for all the children they've killed. They've asked permission to include Lily's name and picture. Samantha looked surprised. What did you tell them? I told them to ask me again in a year. Some wounds take time. As they walked back toward the colony, Alan looked up at the orange sky of Argos III. The second, smaller moon was just becoming visible as night approached. We should name it, Samantha said, following his gaze. Alan nodded. Lily's moon. Across the galaxy, former enemies began the slow, difficult work of building peace. There would be setbacks and challenges ahead. Not all Vraxians accepted the changes in their society. Not all humans were ready to forgive. But in bars across the frontier, a new toast was heard alongside the old one. People still raised their glasses, for Lily. But now they added, for peace. And on his throne on the Vraxian homeworld, Governor Zekthar, who had refused medical treatments that might undo the compound's effects, made a decision. He would step down from power, but before he did, he established one new tradition. Every year, on the day Lily Price died, the Empire would observe a day of remembrance, a day when no one anywhere in Vraxian territory would rule by fear.